Okay. Hi everyone. So this is DATT2500.2500, and this is week number 8, and we're moving away from modeling to texturing and material. If you were in lab 1, you probably missed the lab, unfortunately, because of issues with the key. Um, so this is going early because some students missed the lab. Luckily, this is not a particularly hard lab. I don't think this stream will last longer than an hour. So, um, sorry, just trying to see. Okay, yay. Okay, so I don't think this stream is going to last very long, mostly because it's relatively easy, but it's really fun, so we should probably, I would probably start. A few notes. Do I have any notes? No. So what we're going to do today is sort of introduction to shaders. Like a lot of stuff we do, it's a huge subject, but I like modeling and stuff like that. It's a lot of like just experimenting and see what happens. Um, we're gonna do a few simple shaders, and I'll show you some of the stuff you can do, and then obviously, like, you are welcome to do any shaders of your own. You can get pretty complicated, and if you know Python or any programming for that matter, you can really get into like programming different. Am I offline? I'm just trying to see if everything is working. So yeah, so if you are um, creating okay, sorry about that, it's giving me weird stuff. Okay, yeah, just making sure it's still working. Okay, so it's not relatively hard. We're not going to do any modeling. I'm going to show you some stuff. I posted in the website a few other tutorials, for example, for subsurface scattering and layer shader. We won't get into it too much, but it's fun anyway. And we'll actually start with a very simple apple. So if you are in the website, you can download, this is just from the internet. You download the color and the bump. A bump map, as I mentioned, is basically will give you sort of the material, sort of the texture of the material, where the color will just give you the color of the material. We'll be using a new menu called the Hypershade. So if you go to Window, Rendering, Editor, and click Hypershade, you can also click it here. So I'll click it from here. And this is how the Hypershade looks like. Basically, this is your material. This is the material that exists in the scene. This is the material that you can choose from. Right now I have only Maya material. This changes if you add all kinds of rendering engine. So we'll use Arnold because it's built in and it's easy to use. But if you have other rendering agent, they will have their own material. And you have, so this is the ones that open up always. Lambert one is the shader that basically this is when you model, this is what you see all the time. It's a flat surface. If you change this one, specifically the Lambert one, every model in your scene, when you open it up, will be that color or that texture. So be careful not to touch it. We'll make new ones. You have this, which is the material view. So it gives you like indication of the types of material there is. So you can change cloths, for example, teapot, ocean, glass fill, hair, sphere, plane. So it's up to you. I'll use the sphere because that will give us, and you can change like the lighting scheme. So you can do off, you can do this. It just gives you indication how it's going to look. I'll stay with this. It doesn't really matter, but it gives you some idea. And this is the property editor. So each type of shader will have its own editor, its own options. Some have more, some have less, and we'll go over some of them. We won't cover some of them in lecture, but basically the ones you use the most is the color, which is where you link the texture, transparency, map, which is the bump mapping, and you might add other stuff, depends. If you're using like a bling, which is a shinier material, you might be using bling. So this is the main. No, I don't want to message anything. So this is the main thing. And this window, this is an interesting window. This will be where the nodes of the materials are going to be. And we'll get to it when we do other types of shaders. Shaders work node based. So it's actually really useful. And we'll talk about it more later. So I'll start with making just a sphere. Just a polygon. Actually, no. We'll do a polygon. I think the eye is just make it bigger, just so you can see. And we'll start with the apple. What I'm going to go again in the hypershade, I'm going to make a bling. Okay, so a bling is a shiny material, basically. And I'm going to drag it. So it's called bling 1. I'm going to give it a name, apple. And I'm going to just, actually before I drag it, I will add the texture. So there's the color tab. And I want to click on this like checkered mark. And this gives me option. And there's a lot of them. We won't go over. We might go over some of them in the end. But what I want to do is just file. Okay. And then here at the image name, I'm going to click this. And I'm going to find the apple. Yes. Okay. And this is the overall material. Now I'm going to drag it to my sphere here. So just middle click on your mouse and drag it. And it gives you the material, but you can't really see the color. What you want to do is click 6 on your keyboard and suddenly it will give you the colors. Okay? In your keyboard, we use like the 1, 2, 3 for the smoothing. But the 4 gives you a wireframe. The 5 gives you just the shader, and 6 gives you the texture and the shader. 7 gives you lighting, and we'll use it eventually. So this is basically the apple. Now, right now it's really, really smooth. And like no material in reality is that smooth. You want it to have a little bit of a bump to it. You want to have some sort of texture to it. So we're going to add a bump map. You can also add normal map. Normal map are more common in games. They're harder to make because they're not just black and white, but they're more nowadays they're a little bit more acceptable, mostly because they're a little bit smaller inside. You can also play around if you want, like for example, I want to do it more ambient. Let's do it a little bit more ambient. Let's just change this. Yeah. Actually, no. Sphere is good. We can play around with this, for example. Just like play around with how shiny it is. and how reflective it is. We don't want it particularly reflective. Okay, so you can see it changes some of the material. And all I want to add is a bump map. So I have here the bump normal mapping. I click here, and again, I can choose whatever, but we'll just choose a file. And this gives you the map, the bump map. And now in the bump value, we click on this arrow here, and this gives us the choice to choose an image. So Apple, oh no, I want the bump. Okay, now you can see it here, and you can see here, this is really like, obviously it didn't change the actual polygons, but it looks, it's way too rough, right? No, nothing looks like that in reality. So we just want to lower the bump. And again, we can go here and click and go back, but we can also go in the here, there's a new there's a menu we haven't used much, but it's going to be very common the more you work. It's called the attribute editor, and among other stuff, it gives you options about all kinds of options we want to use. So we have the apple. This is the material. We want to click on this, and it gives us back here. So all we want to do is click on this. No, sorry. We want to click on this, and this gives us back to this, the bump to the whatever. There's other way to access it. I'll show you in a second. And I'm just going to change that to 0.1. And you see now there's a bit of a texture, but it's not overwhelming. And you can probably also lower it even more. Another way to access it is if you click. So if you look here, this is the shading network. And again, this is node based. So for example, I can attach and detach using the arrows. I can attach and detach them if I don't need. So for example, I can do, if I just drag this, this is no longer connected and the bump is gone, and I can connect it again. And I can also, so I can access the same thing I access on the attribute editor. I can just click here on bump to the one and change the depth. And I'm actually going to do like this. So, and it gives you a good, like, clear look how it's going to look. And this is the apple. Okay. So I'm going to scale it down a bit and move it aside and do the next one. So the next one we're going to do is an eye. So again, make a sphere, scale it, and actually, sorry, we want to make for this polygons, NURB sphere. The reason for this is just for some reason, well, it's not for some reason. There is, you have to do UV mapping in this case, and we just don't want to do it. So it works better on a NURB sphere. And I just want to rotate this 90 degrees. Okay, so it's will look like an eye. And create a new material. So I can again make a new material in the hyper shade. I can also right click and assign new material, and I will assign a blend again. And now if I open this, I have a new blend. I'll give it a name, which is eye. Okay, and I don't want to attach a color to it because I don't have a texture. I'm only using and you can see also the mess. If it gets really messy here, the node attribute, right click on material and graph network will clean up this this window. Also, A will center around the editor. So click on the color again. Click on this checkerboard. And again, like, you can change color. Just if you want to change a color, you can just change it here. but we don't want to do it. So just click on the checkerboard and choose ramp. So a ramp is basically a gradient, and it just gives you doesn't look good right now, but it just gives you a gradient you can play around with. So the first thing we're going to do is just click on a few corners of the ramp, have like a few um, uh, option, like a few color options, and we're going to, so it's hard to see, but like if you click on the circle, this give you color options. I'm just gonna move it a bit. Again, this is similar if you ever worked in Photoshop on gradients, so it's not a big deal. And if you click, and again, you can give it just a color. But we don't want to do that. We want to do, we want to select the color, sorry. We want to click here again. And we want to choose fractal, okay? Actually, go back to the ramp before I forget. Make sure in the type, do you wrap? Because if not, that will that won't look very good. So right now, something like that. You're already starting to see what I'm trying to do. Go back here. Go back to the fractal. And you can play around with it. Right now, we don't want to do too much, but I can change the color gain. Let's change the color gain to, let's make it blue. So I'm making like a blue eye. Okay. And you can, again, you can play around with these different options, but for now I don't like this color. Yeah, something like that. Go back to the eye, to the ramp, and again you want to start like, so first of all this will be like here, and this will be the edge of the eye, and I can change it to another color. Let's do something like this. This a little bit, I want it bigger. And I can also move it like this, so it will look like an eye. And if you look now at the eye, this is starting to look like an eye. Well, it's looked like an eye. We might want to do that. This is a little bit bigger. Yeah, something like this. And I want to play around with the blend a bit. I want to, sorry, change specular tighter. I want eccentricity a lot smaller. Specular roll off. Okay, so this is the eye. As I said, very, very simple. And we can play around with it more. So for example, let's say I want to add, like, you know how eyes have a bit of red in them. So I can just like add like here, and I can just like, let's say, whoop, put a red, but it won't look particularly good. You can see. Like something like this, and you can do something like this if you want. You can also add another ramp here if you want, another another let's add another fractal. So I'm gonna click I'm gonna turn this off. Click here, add fractal. I added it in the wrong place. So, for example, here I added it in the wrong place, so I can actually just disconnect it. So I want to disconnect this, and I can delete this. I want this to be black. Okay. I want here, I want to connect a fractal. So it won't look that good, like you can see. We want this to, and I want it to be, again, the color gain will change the color. I want it to be pinkish. And I'm going back here, and it should be like here. And you can look here how it looks. It's not the best look. Let's play around with the fractal a bit and see what happens. Okay, so as you can see, I'm playing around with stuff, and let's see how it looks. So it sort of looks, it actually looks somewhat decent. Again, I can play around with this a bit more. Let's do with the ramp a bit more. I'm just gonna turn this off. Something like this. Sort of look like an eye. It's not an amazing eye. We'll do like a better eye eventually, but maybe next week. But this is a way to use the node-based system. Let's make it a little bit smaller. Okay. And again, you can add more and more. You can, let's open up the hypershade again. Sorry. I can add more and more ramp and just change stuff in the ramp. We're not gonna do it because it's become heavy, but you can do it. So play around with this, it's fun. Now the last one I'm going to do, I'm just gonna save it in scenes. Okay. So the next one we're going to do, and that will be the last, will be the third one. We're going to use displacement map. So displacement map, unlike bump map, it's the same kind of picture. It's like a black and white picture, but displacement map changes the geometry of the object itself, where it doesn't just give it texture. It's very useful when you're doing, let's say, something that was 3D sculpted, and you want to get it back to being, but you don't want to have to rig it when it's still 3D sculpted and stuff like that. So this is what you want to play around with. So I'm going to make a sphere again, and I'm actually going to make a moon. So I'm going to make a sphere. Now, but this one is a little bit different because we want to use something called, we want to use the Arnold shader for that, the Arnold renderer, sorry. And we want to use shaders that are specific for the Arnold renderer, because if not, it will just crash, because that's what happens. So the first thing we want to do is actually turn on the Arnold renderer, and we'll talk about like the rendering in later week, but we're going to go to Window, Setting Preference, and Plugin Manager. And we're going to go here to the end. There's a mtoa.mll. We want to do it, click on Loaded. Okay, and close. Now what will happen? So if you click here, this is the render view. And usually what happens, I'm just going to close it. You usually have like my software, hardware, and stuff like that. This is like built in. You don't use it for any professional capacity, but it will show you this render called Arnold Renderer. So just make sure you move it to that, and you can close. Or you can go here, which is the this is like the properties of the render. Again, we'll talk about it more next week, but know that this is here. And go here and choose Arnold Render. Okay? And now when I open the Hypershade, you see how I suddenly have more options? So up until then, I had only the Maya built-in option, but now I have the Arnold options. And so we want to go here, and we're going to go and create a new shader. Choose a shader called AI Standard. Okay? And there's nothing about it that is different than in terms of the material than these guys. The main difference between those two is simply the fact that the this will render in an Arnold render. Okay. So I'm gonna go to color, and I'm going to actually I'm gonna just keep it as is. Maybe yeah, keep it white. What I want to do, and I want to see it here. So again, graph network, and this will give me the graph network. Now, if you look here, so this is the shader itself. So you have color, all kinds of stuff like that. And again, you can connect just by creating a new one and connecting. But we want to click on this AI Standard 1 SG. This will give us the displacement map. And the displacement map, as I said, it's a map that changes the geometry of the material. So you click here, and again, click on the checkerboard. As I said, this is really easy and kind of fun for experiment. And this will create a new node called displacement. Again, you can connect and disconnect just using your mouse. And again, it's a file. I downloaded it in advance. Let's see. Again, this moon texture I got from the internet. And I'm going to connect it. Yes. Okay. Now, and drag it into, make sure this is dragged to the sphere. Okay. Now, you cannot see anything. So I like the bump map that showed you in the viewport how it looks like here. We can't really see anything here. We need to render it to see it. Now, if I click here and I render, right now, it will render as black. The reason is that Arnold render requires lighting. So for example, if I just go here with those two and click on the render, but render in Maya software. Oh no, it crashed my computer. Never mind. I should not have done that. I forgot that it crashes the computer. Crashes Maya. It's a new thing. It used to not crash Maya, but now it crashes Maya. Just making sure that the so now without the thing, if I render this and I'm going to render this in my software, it won't need any lighting. It won't render particularly nice, but you see how it looks. And you can save that image. But we want to render... I'm just going to do a new scene for this one. I'll open this another time. I'm going to just do it very quickly again. So I made a polygon sphere. I'm going to go to window to the hypershade. So again, click here. I keep forgetting they put it here. And create AI standard. Click here. Displacement map. File. Where are you, file? Yes. And now click here. Choose the moon. You can also like edit here. File. Let's see what happens. Moon. Yeah. Okay. Drag it here. Click on 6. So you can see the moon, but there's no... It's completely smooth, even though there is an actual map here. And if you render it, again, make sure it's Arnold render, or it will crash your computer really, really badly. Yeah. If you render it, it will be black. So I'll render it again. So I just need to make sure there is light in the scene. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to close this. I'm going to go to create, light, and let's do directional light. And if you want to see how it looks with the light, click on 7. This will give you an indication how your scene looks. Maybe rotate this a bit. Something like this. And now, so like feels like a moon. Again, you can't really see any difference. Again, even if I do. But if I render this, suddenly your moon has... oh, this is the bad side. 1 second. I want to do something like this. I think this will look better. Maybe. Yeah. Render this again. And you can see the displacement map literally changed the geometry. So this is usually how you do stuff like import something for a game that has been 3D sculpted and has a lot of information. You just save the information as a displacement map so you can use it after. Okay, I'm just going to close it. Okay, so this is basically the lab. I'm just gonna show you what a few more fun stuff. Go back to this, and I'm going to make let's say about 20 spheres. Just duplicate them. Okay, I'll do 18, so the eye and the... And this is basically your assignment. What I want you to do is play around with the hypershade, create 20 different material. I'll do a few, and you can do the rest at home. Or play around with it. It's up to you how much you want to experiment, obviously, but I want 20 of those. Okay, Control G. Okay, and if you want to be really fancy, you can just like put them on a some sort of stage, but it's fine if it's like this as well. So let's start with this. Right click, assign new material. Let's just add a checker, a simple checker. So Lambert, I want it to be matte, and open up the hypershade. Let's go Lambert 2, make sure it's Lambert 2. Call it check. Okay. Click on the color, click here, and you want to choose the checker. Okay. And this is a very simple sort of procedurally generated texture. It's used a lot in for when you do UV mapping, which we'll do this week. But it's very useful. Now, I can keep it like that, but let's play around with this a little bit. So graph network, click on A if you want to center it. Okay, so I'm gonna click here on transparency on the checkerboard, click it again and choose checker. And what will happen is that it will actually create that some of the material, in this case the white material, will be transparent. Let's go here and see what we can do with this. So let's change something like that, and now it's like white. And again, you can see how it changed in the nodes, and play with it. I said today it's a simple lab. Okay, next up, let's go assign an ocean shader. So an ocean shader is basically a shader that emulates an ocean. Just make sure we are in Maya software is fine. Yep, and it crashed. So ocean shader is a shader that looks like an ocean. I don't know why it keeps crashing for when you do Maya software. It's very annoying. Just be careful when you render, I guess. I'm just gonna... I didn't save, so it doesn't matter. So I'm just gonna make a few spheres and show you more stuff. Okay, won't show you all of those, but let's open the hypershade. Make sure you name everything also. So this is the ocean shader. As I said, what it does, it makes stuff look like an ocean. So click on it. I'm just gonna drag it to here. So you can sort of see what it does if you go near, and you can play around with it. And this actually has a lot of options. So for example, you can play around with how the scale of everything. Let's do sphere here. You can it's an animated shader, so you can play around with like how many waves there are, like turbulence, let's say, uh, etc. There's like materials, so maybe you want the water to be like, let's make them pink, so you can have this foam color. We can change. It can be this. I'm going to just change it to Arnold. Actually, no. And you can have like a pink ocean. And this shader will be animated. Obviously, we usually put it in on like a box, but if you want to do a quick ocean, you can do that. Obviously, hopefully your Maya won't crash, but you know. Okay. What other stuff we can do? You have a ramp shader. Drag it here. Go to the ramp shader. No, I did not mean to do this. What happened? Okay, we'll keep it like this, whatever. Let's do, where is my ramp shader? Okay. Ramp shader, go here. Again, it makes a ramp. And you can add a few others and change the color. So let's do purple, blue, and let's do yellow. And you want to see how it looks here. So if you can see, what it did is basically created material that is a gradient, and you can change, let's say, smooth, spline, whatever. You can also add, like, instead of being a color, let's put a file. I don't know, put like this. Won't look particularly good, but you can add that. Actually, instead of a file, let's add a checker here. And let's delete this. And I just deleted this. So you can see how stuff change. And this is used for if you do toon shader in your scene. This is how you do it, basically. Let's change. Something like this. And then this. And let's, no. As you can see, I can go like really crazy with this if I want. But this is used for if you want to do toon shader, for example. Okay, next up, let's do let's do just a bling, but we can attach wood to it. So you can attach all kinds of stuff. So similar as we attach the ramp, we can do wood. And this gives us like sort of a basic wood shape, and I can play around again with the and this gives us like a wood texture, for example. What's more? I'll do one more. Trying to think. Let's do just a anti. So this is another very common type. It just follows the light with you. And let's add marble to it. And in the vein color, let's do in the filler color. Let's put a ramp. And we want, let's do it U ramp. No. We can, as you can see, there's all kinds of ramp as well. Let's do this one. This looks cool. No. Let's do this. Actually, we'll keep this one. And let's do this color. Let's make it green. No. This should be purple. And you can do this again, and you can go forever. If I go here and look at the graph network, you can see my graph network, and again I can play around. Maybe we want to play with the vein color. Let's do leather, see what happens. Just change, and we can do the size, change the size, change the density, spottiness. And let's go back to the anthropic and let's add a bump map. So, and it would be marble as well. Oh, you see, it's really heavy because it's so much information. So we want to go here to the bump. Like this is getting really relatively complicated. It's hard to see. I need to. Thank you. Let's go to here and change it to 0.1 and change the vein color to black. Okay, and now you have this material. It's kind of cool looking. Looks like a planet with. So you can continue doing this. Just play around with the different options. Make 20 of those. If you want to get more advanced, I put a few stuff like SSS shader and layer shader and another eye tutorial if you want to do like a realistic eye tutorial. Do as much as you can. This is all due on Sunday. And yeah, this is really fun. Just have fun with this. It's also not really hard. And submit a screenshot unless you manage to render it without, crashing your computer. Oh, actually, I wanted to show one more thing. I wanted to show the glow. So I'm just gonna start new material. Make sure I didn't name anything here, but make sure you name stuff. So it should be material 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. And in your um, hypershade, each material should be named as well. And I want you to like not blend one, but call it like wood. And I want a screenshot of this of the hypershade so I can see you've done all the plan whatever. Yeah. So I want a screenshot of all of this. I just gonna do like a pong, and I want to show this option called the glow. So the pong will have every material will have a option, a special effects option. Let's give it a color. Let's give it red, which will be glow. So you wanna maybe you can add glow to it, and it won't be visible now, but basically when you render it, your object will glow. I'm just gonna delete this so it won't crash. Hopefully Maya won't crash. Yeah, so you can see this glows. So if you can save a rendered image, this looks really nice. I really like this one. If you can save a rendered image, it will be great. To save the rendered image, just go to File, Save Image, and this will render you the image. It will save you the image. So if you can render it, that would be great. If it crashes every 5 minutes, don't render it. That's fine. Make sure everything in name. Put like a screenshot of like the outliner and the and your and the hypershade if you can, please. If you're not watching that, I'm sorry. So you won't lose your grade, but I would like to see you work organized. So that's it for today. As I said, pretty short. Next week we're gonna do textures. So we'll do UV layout, and we have 2 weeks. We'll get into hopefully pretty far into UV layout in the next few weeks. And that will prepare you hopefully for your next project. And then we're gonna do rendering, and probably the last class will just like be fun stuff. So yeah. So I will see you next week. This should be up in 2 hours or so in the website. Thank you very much.